Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Depressed Dior, and this is Middara on Tabletop Simulator. We did finish Gatekeepers of Gehenna. We did succeed, so we're going to be going to Winding Down next, page 259. Zeke wiped some of the sweat from his brow. If nothing else, the battle had helped beat away the sleepiness he felt. They'd managed to destroy a gatekeeper, and without the rest of the team to help. He looked at Justice. She was going over what was left, which didn't seem so much like a corpse. It looked as though dozens of grandfather clocks had exploded. "Hey," Zeke called, wiping oily blood from his weapon with the back of one sleeve. That fight shouldn't have happened. It's great we won and all, but we should have gone for backup. Damocles added, his own weapon still drawn. We could not have known this was an enemy we could defeat. We promised we wouldn't do anything too dangerous by ourselves. Justice frowned at them both, not making eye contact. Yeah, my bad. I didn't mean to get so carried away. Damocles pointed back the way they come. We should go back to the others. What? No way. Justice strode right past them toward an open doorway. We made it to the archive. We already killed the Guardian. All we have to do now is take what we came for. She practically skipped through the open door, and the top of her head vanished down another set of stairs. Zeke and Damocles shared an exasperated look, then hurried after her. Curious room, 260. That is down here. Justice had been on her best behavior since she led them into the ambush. Zeke had to wonder whether she was trying to be good or if she was just finally running out of steam. Something wrong? He asked, extinguishing the cigarette against the nearby stone wall. She hesitated for a few seconds. I'm wondering if the Anointed are really down here. It feels like we've been going all night, and all we found was Jacobe's corpse. Maybe he was the only one who came this far. Zeke put one arm around her shoulder. We'll find them, Justice. We've wandered through so many of these damn ruins, and pretty soon there won't be anywhere left for them to hide. Yeah. She nodded vigorously, though she still wasn't meeting his eyes. I hope so. If something happened because I wasn't here to help. Guys, Damocles interrupted from several feet away. I think I found something. What? Zeke hurried over. Damocles was standing in front of a large set of double doors. Bright light glowed from beneath them. I've peeked through there, and it doesn't seem like anything's moving. Great, let's check it out. Zeke braced against the door and slowly pushed it open. The space beyond was thick with dust and brightly lit with mysterious light from the ceiling. The room was round, with half a dozen low marble pedestals along the wall. Each one had but a single object on it, along with a plaque in the newly familiar Arcalan writing. Zeke looked at each of the objects in turn. There was a fountain with a silver mercury-like fluid constantly splashing up inside, a woven cornucopia-shaped basket, as long as his arm, and full of wooden sticks set on one pedestal. A pair of spectacles with several different lenses of various colors sat on another. Each object seemed strange, but none were very much like treasure. Zeke went for the glasses, but Justice slapped his hand away. Zeke, don't touch, she demanded. Last time you grabbed something, we went on the worst water slide ever. Now it's my turn to tell you to be careful. These could be terribly dangerous. Let's take this slow and not touch anything until we know what it does. All right, Zeke grumbled. Justice went straight for the pedestal at the very center of the room, which held a book almost as thick as the tome she carried, but with intricate metal filigree? Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. Around the edges. Justice read the plaque, then lifted the book off its pedestal and into her arms. Zeke tensed, preparing for some terrible trap. Maybe the floor would start to rumble, rocks would fall, or acid would flood the room. When nothing happened, he made his way behind her. Glancing over her shoulder, the book was written entirely in Nixie script. I take it you can read that, he asked. Justice nodded. Thanks to my Theodosian book, which can help me translate at least, she said absently. She wasn't looking at him. She seemed absorbed in the book. Oh, wow. What? Zeke leaned in close. There was a little illustration on the page, a detailed sketch of the Pontifex. At least that was what he thought it was. Justice remained silent as she went over the same portion of the text several times. By the time she finished, she seemed to be bouncing up and down. This is it. The reason the Grim Deacons want the Pontifex so badly. The way to save Nightingale. It's all in here. Zeke leaned in closer, and as if he would be able to read it just by looking harder. Finding Zephyr and the rest of the Anointed had always been a dim, abstract hope, but if Justice was right, the book meant that they wouldn't have to find him to save Nightingale. I'll have to take some time to really read it all, but I think this is what we need. Justice held it up. This is the whole reason the Anointed came to Gehenna in the first place. Justice barely finished her thought when a loud boom left their ears ringing. They whipped around and saw that it was Damocles holding the cornucopia basket and looking shocked. One of the sticks had fallen to the ground, exploded as it touched the ground. The splinters of the stick writhed like a living thing, swelling rapidly as massive trunk and sturdy limbs formed. It looked like it was growing into a huge dead tree with several partially rotten corpses melted into the trunk. Now who's careless? Justice swore loudly under her breath, backing away. Zeke was caught off guard as something slammed him in the chest. An irresistible weight flung him through the air. He saw Justice go flying too. The book tumbled from her fingers as the two of them were slammed against the wall. Zeke groaned and wincing as he pressed on his chest. It felt like he had broken a rib. Damocles appeared above Zeke, took him by the arm, and dragged him along the stone floor toward the door. Justice was sprawled out close beside them, her voice faint as she tried to collect herself. What the hell is that? Damocles panted, backing away from the monstrosity. I don't know, but I'd rather not have to find out. Zeke knelt beside Justice, helping her into a sitting position. Are you okay? Well, yeah. Justice blinked, disoriented from the blow. She looked like she wasn't seriously harmed, and Zeke found himself more relieved than he thought he would be. Come on, Zeke pulled at her, trying to drag her to her feet. We need to go. No, the book. We can't leave it. Justice tugged her way free, jerked to her feet, and charged straight toward the monster. Justice, stop. Zeke got up, too, drawing his weapon in a shaky hand. Justice tried to dodge around the creature and lunge for the fallen book, but to no avail. The snaking roots shot toward her, slamming her into her petite frame. She hit the ground hard. Justice! Zeke screamed at her, but she wasn't moving. Damn it! He threw Damocles a glance and charged toward the creature with his weapon raised. Damocles watched as Zeke ran wide, dodging a terrifying wooden limb. He was embarrassed that he was the cause of what was happening. In his hands, he held more of the dead branches. He thought that maybe they could be used to help them distract the monster long enough to get Justice. Or maybe they would just make things worse. Flag check. Do we have experience guide? Not in this playthrough, so it's going to be page 262. Alright, something's coming. Excuse me. The fire had burned out. Rook couldn't leave Remy alone while he wandered back to scavenge more fuel, so he sat by the light of a glowstone with his back to the wall, as he did his best to get a view of every entrance. He briefly glanced back to where Remy was resting to make sure she was still asleep. Gage lounged under one of her arms, but the small creature looked alert. Rook could only imagine what Nightingale was going through. The Maluma could have been tormenting her, as it had been since they arrived in Gehenna. Maybe she had been ambushed in the night without anyone to protect her. Rook banished the thoughts. Even if she had been, she was capable, and there was nothing he could do about it anyway. He had to focus his energy on what he could do and protect Remy. He hoped that Zeke and the others were still safe. Gage growled, and it sounded louder than Rook would have expected from such a small animal. The cat's fur stood up, and Rook followed its gaze. Something shuffled in the dark corridor ahead. Though the sound was muffled, Rook rose to his feet, shaking out the stiffness and exhaustion. He drew his weapon, advancing toward the open doorway. To his horror, he saw creatures stirring. There were too many for him to safely engage them, but with Remy nearby, he didn't have a choice. Sari was suddenly beside him. Allow me to help. She flashed him a reassuring smile before turning back to the darkness. What about bounty? Rook asked, glancing at the advancing creatures. Sari hesitated for only a moment. I'll have to chance that. I won't let anything happen to you. With that, she manifested. Her ghostly form became opaque and tangible before him. Sari stirred the air with her arms, making wide, sweeping motions that disturbed the loose papers and books and sent scraps of white parchment floating around them. Rook had never seen Sari fight before, and he didn't even know she could. But she had a look of danger in her eyes. Her magical energy illuminated her bare skin with a purple hue, and Rook felt a warm energy around him. With renewed cause, Rook gripped his weapon, preparing for a fight. Dangers in the Dark, page 264. Boop. Oh. So here's a big picture of Suri in her physical form. Boop. All right, Dangers in the Dark, another duel encounter. In the back corner of the chamber, the Grotesque Effigy thrashes wildly, threatening to crush Justice as its roots snake through large cracks in the ground. It might be best to simply try and avoid the Grotesque Effigy and just save Justice. Meanwhile, Rook steels himself against the coming threat. He must protect Remy, and he doesn't intend to fail in his duties. So we'll load it. And here we are. Alright, so we have a new monster. And I need to actually switch things over and all that good stuff, but I'll do that off screen. So yeah, for this fight, we don't have Nightingale at all again. So some key things to note here. The setup here is very similar to that room we fell into, that Elifie fell into. We're starting at the top part of it, and of course it goes down to elevation 1. There's an objective here. There's a gatekeeper right off the bat, as well as 2 poppets. Over here we have just the effigy, and then these are root tokens. We'll talk a little bit more about root tokens in a little bit. And then, of course, we have Justice, but who is, I believe, unconscious. And then we have Damocles and Zeke. And unfortunately, Zeke starts next to a root, which is really, really bad. And there's also some stuff we can grab. Anyway, let's go ahead and dive right into this. So, win condition, the Grotesque Effigy is defeated. Alternate win condition is you grab Justice and carry her out. And then lose condition is being defeated. Setup for the in conditions for setup 2 is essentially if setup 1 has reached an in condition and Remy has taken no damage. Special encounter rules, outbound party, same stuff as before. Now it's the only thing to point out here is if we have the story flag experience guide. If we do, if the story flag experience guide. If so, read special encounter a friend in need. If not, read special encounter rule a friend in the dark. So we have a friend in the dark. With nobody else to help Rook, Suri decided to appear and lend a hand. When setting up this encounter, reveal small and large cards UM27 to access Suri's initiative and command cards. These cards will be used during this encounter. Suri starts the encounter on any unoccupied space adjacent to Rook. Alright, so with all that said and done, let's go ahead. Was it UM26? 27. Okay, so here's Suri, who has a standee. Now, I believe the rules for adjacency is it does take elevation into account, so I don't think you can actually put him on the bottom floor. Or her on the bottom floor, sorry. Here's her initiative card, and here's her actual command card. Oop. We'll just move Breeze out of the way for now, since she's technically still with Nightingale. Alright, so let's go over Breeze. Or, sorry, not Breeze, but Suri. A friend made manifest. Her stats are pretty much all slightly above average except for strength. She has 15 defense, 30 health, 6 movement, 0 armor. Her combat dice are 2 grays. Hostile aura, when Suri is dealt damage from an attack, the attacker is dealt that much magic damage. So she reflects everything, from attacks anyway. Arkala's gift, she has resistance to magic, which is great since there's a freaking gatekeeper. And then fleeting savageness. If an opponent dealt damage to another ally since the end of Suri's last turn, damage dealt to that opponent by Suri is irreducible damage. So she gets very angry if someone harms Rook. She has a standard attack, just a melee attack, and then she has Unfamiliar Feelings, which is where she makes 3 attacks against an opponent that dealt damage to another ally since the end of Suri's turn. So if Rook gets hurt, she can triple attack it for irreducible damage. And then she has a 3 stamina cost spell called Unexist, where if it connects, it's a spell 6. She has a green casting die and 2 green conviction. If the target has 25 hit points or lower, they instantly die. So it's an instant death spell, kind of like an execute. And then for symbols, shields give physical damage, books give magic damage, and then every burst gives her a stamina point. So if you happen to have a way of giving her courage, that will make Suri pretty awesome. Now, I did mention back when I started resuming these recordings that I did scrap the videos where I originally did this playthrough. For one, I made a lot of mistakes, but one thing to note about this particular fight, despite Suri's stats, I actually rolled really, really bad with her. Like, even with Grays, I just had the worst luck. But it is what it is. Anyway, anything else of note? Surging monsters. All intelligent combatant cards other than the Grotesque Effigy have the following AI step added to the bottom of their card. Otherwise, move towards the nearest adventurer. On watch, when setting up this encounter after dealing initiative cards, move Rook to the front. And then, of course, up here we have the stuff for dual encounters. There's a thing for a friend in need, which obviously involves Padric, which we don't have. And then there's coming to, for the blue exit, when an adventurer carrying Justice moves on or adjacent to the blue exit, you read all this hidden text. Tracking time, at the end of every round, add a time token to the initiative track. Damocles has 3 dead branches, which he can spend a stamina point to throw. If he throws it, it becomes a Fragor, and the Fragor will treat all figures as opponents. So it'll be their enemy and the tree's enemy. So I'll go ahead and grab those sticks now. Okay. So that takes care of Damocles. And then on the other side, Vulnerable. Remy is seriously injured and needs to rest. Use her figure to denote her location on the board. Remy may not make actions, use abilities, or use items, and her initiative card is not added to the initiative track. However, she is still in play as an adventurer and can be targeted by opponents. So yeah, depending on how you start your first turn, you can very easily, instantly lose this fight. It's not fun, let's put it that way. Also, technically, since Justice is not actually on the field, I don't think you get LFE. But I'll go look that up before I actually do that fight. Or do this fight, rather. Of course, we have a Gatekeeper. Rook is going to be added to the initiative after the fact. And then, of course, we got Suri. And we need to get a new initiative card. Just kind of putting things away while we're at it. Okay. Grotesque Effigy right there. All right. Final thing we need to talk about is Justice. Justice has been knocked unconscious by the Grotesque Effigy. Use her figure to denote her location on the board. Justice may not make actions, use abilities, or items, and her initiative card is not added to the initiative track. Unlike Remy, Justice may not be targeted by opponents. An adventurer adjacent to her may pick her up as an counter action. If they do, place Justice's figure on their adventure card. If they are ever defeated, you just place her back down on the spot you've been defeated at. Blue objective. Rook is keenly aware that there are more monsters in the dark. Heading in his direction, but Remy is still too injured to be moved. He'll have to hold out as long as possible, depending on how many time tokens have been added. Read the corresponding hidden text to determine what emerges. So 2, 4, 6, and 8. And then, of course, we got the red objective there. An adjacent adventurer may make the encounter action to read the following hidden text. So one thing I don't exactly know about for dual encounters is how urgency works. I don't know if they're just, like, for example, if I'm in a situation where the tree doesn't make an action, does that mean I get urgency for this encounter? Do they have their own urgency counts? I don't exactly know. I'll try to look it up real quick, but I don't think I ever got an answer for it. So with all that said and done, I'll go ahead and go over the Grotesque Effigy, and I'm going to go over the roots it has, and then we'll call it good. Unfortunately, I was a little surprised that the roots don't have HP values. They should, but whatever. Anyway, Grotesque Effigy. It's an Avarice 4. Avarice, what that does is that number represents how many extra loot cards you get if you defeat it. So instead of 1 loot card, you would actually get 5. You'll get 1 as a base, and then plus 4 from the Avarice. This thing has 2 green and an power. 2 armor, 1 movement, even though it doesn't actually have a movement step. 13 defense, despite being a giant tree. Has 50 HP. Its symbols is every 4 shields is plus 8 physical damage. And then it has a burst that will do a pull 4 at force 12. Colono Colony, the Grotesque Effigy has resistance physical damage and magic, unless the source of the damage is from an axe. So pretty much half damage from everything, except irreducible, of course. Regrowth, the Grotesque Effigy has Crush, Unstoppable, Hulking, Colossal, and Immunity Condemn. Whenever the Grotesque Effigy is dealt damage, add 1 heal token to this card to a maximum of 2. At the start of the Grotesque Effigy's turn, use all heal tokens on this card. So yeah, every time you do any damage, no matter the value, it gets a heal token, and then the moment it takes its turn, it's going to use every heal token it has. So hit it twice for 1 damage each. You'll give it 2 heal tokens, and then it's going to heal for 12. So if you're going to hit this thing, you have to hit it hard or before it can heal, or finish it off before it can heal. Is there an opponent adjacent to a root? Swap places with the root adjacent to the most opponents. Any opponents that occupy the same space as the Grotesque Effigy get forcibly moved. So essentially, what it does is it teleports on top of you, smashes you that way, and then it starts wrecking shit. Is it an opponent within range 6 or of itself or a root? All opponents within range 6 of itself or a root are pulled blue spaces at force 13. So blue, I believe, does anywhere from 4 to 10. So 4 to 10 spaces. So good luck trying to resist that, with heavies anyway. And then is there an opponent within reach 2? Make an attack on everyone that's reach 2. And then you can swap out immediately. So this thing just teleports around, essentially, with its roots. So kind of the key thing you want to deal with first before you do anything involving the effigy is deal with the roots. Just get rid of the roots as quickly as possible, and then it'll become just a stationary enemy. Speaking of the roots, give me 1 moment. Okay, so here are roots. And of course we have poppets as well. Root tokens are part of an encounter setup that feature the Grotesque Effigy. Roots count as figures with 6 HP, 10 defense, and 6 armor. Roots have resistance physical damage and magic damage, unless the source of the damage is from an axe. Roots have immunity to spells and effects, so you can't even blast them. All opponents who provoke a break attack from a root or are adjacent to a root at the start of the Grotesque Effigy turn are dealt green physical damage. Roots do not drop combatant loot. So yeah, these things are brutal. They just, if the tree goes first, it's going to hit everybody essentially that's adjacent to a root for just raw damage. And then if you try to move away from it, you're going to get hit again. It's just not fun. And that is pretty much it. That should be it. So we'll go ahead and actually I'll show you off one more thing. So be right back. All right, figure it'd be best to go ahead and go over the tags real quick. So we got Colossal, so it just ignores elevation when drawing line of sight. It has Crush, so if it ever is on top of somebody, it's going to do irreducible purple damage and push them away. Hulking, can't be moved around, and Unstoppable, I think, is the last one. Yeah, while moving, it'll treat obstructing terrain as blah, 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 blah. So standard stuff there. All right. So, yep, Unstoppable, Hulking, Colossal, Crush. Okay. I believe that's everything. So off screen, I will go ahead and swap out Nightingale with Rook again, and we should be good to go. So I am the Depressed Eroid. This was Middara on Tabletop Simulator. Like I said, it was just going to be story bits this time. So see you guys in a bit.